category. And if you think about it, we said that we were in roughly 1,000 accounts at the end of Q4. So, we feel like we've still got good runway into kind of this elite prestige category, and we're being very disciplined in our launch. Now, what is difficult to tell is, part of the way that these accounts engage is they will buy a certain amount of product. We do give them at the very beginning some, kind of trial product to get a feel for it, and then they typically buy, and then they try and wait and see where it fits in the practice. And so we're still working our way through that. And of course, you have some that love it and lean in really heavy. You have some that love it and sort of say, this is where it fits in my practice. You have others that use it and are like, it's okay, and maybe I'll use it here, maybe I won't. We also have in accounts, our competitors have done a nice job with some of their bundling agreements, which make it harder to bring in new technologies without upsetting the overall broader basket of discounts. So I also believe that, some of these accounts that like the product are going to niche its usage until we have our neuromodulator, in which case now they might be willing to sort of say, hey, I'm not as concerned about disrupting my bundling contract because I've got options here. So there's a range of things that are happening, and that's why it's early innings in terms of what we think that overall stickiness is going to be and what the trajectory is going to be. And then certainly once I get our neuromodulator, I think there'll be another opportunity to sort of revisit what that trend is. But what I would say is we're very encouraged by what we're seeing thus far.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the prestige or premium positioning of the product. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about, what does that mean for the pricing levels, and how the feedback from physicians, how they feel about such a product.
I think, Serge, that's been informed by a lot of different market research that we've done, both on the consumer side and on the physician side. And if you think about it, anytime that innovation is brought into the market, there's an opportunity to potentially get more value, right? Consumers are willing to pay more if a product delivers more value, and practices, specifically these elite practices, have an opportunity to potentially rethink sort of how they charge and their profitability margins. And so when we talk about this prestige category, we're bringing the latest in innovative technologies, whether it's, nh-2, the RHA filler line, and then our neuromodulator, once approved, into these practices. And we're setting up an environment where we're trying to get away from this sort of democratization of products. So if you look at, some of our competitor products that have been in the market for a long time, you can have a med spa down the street that's advertising and doing Groupons around the price of the product, and have a high-end plastic surgery practice that are both selling the same service, but you have sort of this price out there in the market that's in the consumer's mind. One of the things that we've done, in addition to bringing innovation forward, is that we're not allowing our practices to advertise price. We feel that price setting should take place between the physician and the patient in the practice. So when we've done our consumer market research, we're hearing from consumers, yes, as a consumer, I'm willing to spend more for a product that delivers more value. And most consumer markets have segmentation, right? You want to buy a car, do you want to buy a Mercedes, or do you want to buy, something else, right? And people make those decisions all the time. And so consumers get it as long as the value that they're getting for the service is more than what they can get elsewhere, right? So they're willing to do. On the physicians like it because they recognize that over time, what happens is their margin gets compressed, right? As products get out there longer and competitors compete on price, it puts pressure on sort of what they can charge in their overall margin. And so this strategy resonates with them as well. But it's a segment of the market, right? And so we're looking to sort of create sort of a prestige category in aesthetics. And thus far, the narrative, it all makes sense from a customer research. It makes sense from a physician engagement standpoint. And so we really like the strategy and where it's going.
Okay. So from a physician acquisition costs, the RHA fillers are kind of priced similarly to other fillers, but it's really on the other end, on the patient side, where the pricing premium comes in and improves the economics for the physicians.
That's correct. Yeah. So I think if you look at the filler side of it, we price it at sort of a premium, but I think it's netting out to be competitive to sort of peer fillers, the higher end. And so you're right. Their ability for margin is going to be in the form of additional pricing opportunity because it's not priced. I think the neuromodulator is going to open up a little bit of a different dynamic because of the duration profile of the neuromodulator. I think as we've talked previously, we think there's an opportunity for us to get a premium price because of all the money and effort that we've invested to create a differentiated product. And there's probably even more margin for the physician to capture because of the duration profile that we've seen in our clinical trials.
Okay. And then I know this specific filler, has had a good track record in Europe. I think you had previously talked about kind of a 9 to 10% market share. Obviously, U.S. market's very different. Maybe talk about some of those differences and, why a 9 to 10% market share could be an aggressive assumption for the U.S. market.
Right. Yeah, so I think a little of the difference. So first off, in Europe, there's far more number of competitors in the filler market because the regulatory barriers to entry in Europe are much lower. So you see a lot of other filler products that are either local or coming from Asia. And so there's a price segment in that market that's much lower where people will solely compete on price. So actually, I think that market is much harder. Also, because technology, because it's easier to get things approved, you tend to see, advances in technology show up there before. As a matter of fact, the RHA technology that we're selling here in the United States was introduced in 2015, yet it's far and away the latest iteration and evolution. And so from an end customer price, from a competitive landscape price, I think that their market actually is more challenging from that perspective. However, when you come over to the U.S., I think you see more bundling and leverage between the different products, between the neuromodulator and the fillers. And so I think that's why with the smaller competitors, they're able to do more things with, consumer advertising, which you can do here in the U.S. You can't really do in Europe. And again, there are some market-to-market differences when you get into Europe, right? Germany versus France versus Italy versus England. But there, they can't do consumer advertising stuff. And so here, I think manufacturers have an opportunity to bundle. So we think the fact that they've been able to garner 10% share in Europe in a very competitive market that has a price segment without a neuromodulator to partner with their filler, bodes well and speaks, we think, to the quality of the product. And so, hey, listen, we think that type of market share is certainly achievable here in the U.S. For us. I think it's just a question of we're not going to put a time on it because we're going through a very disciplined approach. For us, it's not about how quickly we can take share. It's about laying the foundation to create this prestige category and the right partnerships that we think it's going to pay dividends over time.
Okay. Then let's talk about HintMD. I think everybody thinks it's an innovative product with a lot of potential. It's also poorly understood, especially from us healthcare analysts.
Yeah.
I think it's worth talking about the opportunity here and how it could grow.
Yeah, so maybe to reframe it again, because as you point out, this is a little bit outside of the normal, healthcare, revenue stream. But if you go back, we looked at this market and said, to compete with, some of the other folks, we need to have a loyalty offering or services offering because that's something that these accounts have come to expect. And when we did a bunch of the research, what they said is, hey, we love the idea of creating increased consumer stickiness, but there's several things that we don't love about these platforms. One is they sit outside of our normal workflow. So integrating those in, capturing it, avoiding sort of missed, reimbursement